It's been a minute since I've done any manga on this channel. And if you watched my last video, Jasmine and I were talking about a collection of spooky stories that was called Fox Tales by Tomihiko Morimi. That was translated into English from the Japanese. And today I'd like to talk again about a Japanese collection of spooky stories, but this time in manga form. That is Mimi's Tales of Terror by the one and only Junji Ito. So this actually exists as a prose collection in Japanese. It's a collection of spooky stories that were all based on supposedly real accounts. These two guys went around and they interviewed people who had had paranormal experiences, and they created a little book about that. And Junji Ito liked it so much that he decided to adapt it into manga. And then it went out of print, and then it was re-released in 2021 in this beautiful hardcover edition with a nice afterword by Junji Ito himself. And so I want to talk about this today. So let's dive in. All right, check out this really cool cover here. It says original story by Hirokazu Kihara and Ichiro Nakayama. Now, I want to talk a little bit about these two guys because they were the ones who collected all of the supposedly real accounts of paranormal experiences. Hirokazu Kihara is kind of interesting. He was born in 1960, and he actually worked on Studio Ghibli films. In the 80s, he was a production assistant on Castle in the Sky, and he worked on My Neighbor Totoro, Kiki's Delivery Service. And in 1990, he left Studio Ghibli and made his debut as a writer, nonfiction writer, I guess, as the creator of Shin mi mi bukuro, which in Japanese that means new earmuffs. Mimi bukuro actually means ear bags, but that's how they say earmuffs. So new earmuffs, which was a collection of horror stories that were all supposedly real accounts of the paranormal. And Shin mi mi bukuro was actually seen as a modern hyakumonogatari. Hyakumonogatari means the 100 stories, which is kind of a Japanese storytelling game. It's a traditional storytelling method where, especially in the summertime, in the hot summer like right now, you get in a room with a bunch of people and you light 100 candles, and someone tells a spooky story. And then at the end of the story, you blow out one of the candles and you just go around until the room gets darker and darker, and hopefully the stories get scarier and scarier and chill your spine enough that you don't feel the heat so much anymore, or the humidity. So the other writer, Ichiro Nakayama, a pretty interesting guy also. He's now the head of his own writing and drama school that bears his name. And he graduated from the Department of Film and Video Planning at Osaka University in 1982. His first big thing was working with Akira Kurosawa on the Japanese-French co-production of Ran. And of course, in 1990, he made his debut as a writer with the publication of Shin mi mi bukuro. And around this time, he started working as a television writer for shows. And based on the strength of that horror collection, he was able to make a whole bunch of adaptations and publish more books. And he seems to have like a huge list of works here that are all spooky stories in the modern hyakumonogatari style, and anthologies of ghost stories, and Kaidan, which is Kaidan means the scary stories, even children's ghost stories. So he's got all kinds of stuff. Kihara has said that the inspiration for the project came from staying at Nakayama's boarding house during his university days and spending 3 days and 3 nights telling ghost stories. He found it so interesting that he began taking notes. It's important to remember, however, that this collection does not represent the original so much. This is heavily adapted by Junji Ito, and in fact, this character of Mimi doesn't exist in the original. In the original, none of the stories are connected by the same characters, or it's all just real accounts of people's stories. But I think it works for this collection because Mimi is a really troubled character, and she and her boyfriend, Naoto, get into a lot of odd circumstances and have a lot of kind of nightmarish experiences. And by the end of the collection, you kind of feel for them. I feel like it's a lot more gripping than if it had just been kind of one-offs. It's one-offs, but it's like because it's all interconnected, you really start to become engaged with the characters. All right, back to looking at the cover here. And the spine, and on the back, I got a bad feeling like I'm being watched from outside. It feels like a whole lot of eyes on me. And inside, a little summary here. University student Mimi and her boyfriend Naoto encounter one chilling mystery after another. There's the enigmatic neighbor woman dressed in black from head to toe, but if she's so odd, why does it seem like there are so many others like her? Then, whose eyes track Mimi's movements from the cemetery next door? And why does a bizarre red circle drawn on a basement wall change with each passing day? Yes, and then on the back flap, there's Junji Ito's biography. And actually, at the end of this, there is his afterword. He talks about how this was recommended to him by this editor, Takashi Yokosato. And he says, each and every story had elements that made me gasp. And I got the impression that the usable ideas that made up less than 10% of my own idea notebook had already been done in Shin mi mi Bukuro. Yeah, and then he talks about, this in this reissue, there's a new story in the back here called Monster Prop. So that's kind of nice. You get a little bonus story. It starts in color at the very end. All right, let's take a look inside the table of contents. On the utility pole, the woman next door rustling in the grass, grave placement. One of my very favorite stories, grave placement. It's so unsettling. Seashore, just the two of us. Scarlet Circle, sign in the field, and of course the afterword, and then the bonus story, Monster Prop. And then another afterword that was made just for this collection. As you can see here, on the utility pole is actually only a few pages long. I'd like to actually show just the first story because you get a sense of like Junji Ito's art if you don't know who Junji Ito is. I'm pretty sure if you're watching this video, you know who he is. But yeah, you kind of get a sense. I think it's okay to spoil the very first one because it's only like 3 or 4 pages long. And then after that, I'm not going to spoil anything, so don't worry. So if you don't want to know anything, just don't watch this video. Oh yeah, and it says here, the editorial note, this work is set in a prefecture of the Kansai region in Japan. The translation of the dialogue is rendered in approximation to the dialect of the region. That to me was kind of funky. They talk in kind of like it sounds kind of stupid when they talk, but Kansai dialect is kind of funny. It's kind of, it's not so sophisticated. It's kind of vulgar, I guess you could say. So I think they rendered it in a way that's supposed to mimic that. But to me, it sounded kind of weird. And I kind of wish they would have just left it like standard English and not try to put the, like for example, on this first page. That day, the weather was rainy and unsettled. Hey, what's that there? What's that, Mimi? You can't see it? That weird thing on the utility pole? So you can kind of see like that. The dialogue, it's not bad dialogue, but just the way that it's rendered. You can't see it, that weird thing? Like, it just sounds kind of weird. And then, what is the weird thing? Rain's pouring down hard, and there's this, like, what is that, an old person, like, balancing on the utility pole? Oh my god. Gotta love Junji Ito's detail, his way of depicting, like, the freaky faces and, the dead and the dying. It's just, oh my god, it's amazing. The hell is that? Nuh-uh, that's too creepy. Wham! When we looked back, the old lady had vanished, and the shimmery haze on top of the utility pole was gone too. That's, I hope that doesn't spoil too much for you, but you can see how these stories have a very wide variety of things. Like this one is pretty much just a jump scare, like it all just builds to a jump scare, but it's worth it for the art, I think. The art is really, really, really incredible. The next story in here, The Woman Next Door, is one of my very favorite stories of all of Junji Ito. It's very subtle. It's not so over the top, terrifying or gory or anything like that, but it's something about the weirdness of this. I really, really like it. And I know Junji Ito didn't write this, but I love the way he draws it, and I just find this story to be really, really well done, really well paced. So let's take a look at that one. The Woman Next Door, Mimi basically lives in this little shitty mansion, which is an old apartment building, 40-year-old apartment building, which in Japan, apartment buildings decay rather quickly. So 40 years old is pretty boro, as they say, very decayed. And she gets pissed off because she keeps hearing this music from up above. the room above her, and so she can't get any studying done. So she goes upstairs and she confronts the guy, and he's like, it's not that loud, and anyway, my neighbor doesn't really care anyway. And she's like, your neighbor? And he's like, yeah, but it kind of seems like no one's even living there because she's so quiet. And then, of course, at that very moment, the door opens, and this very strange woman, all dressed in black with sunglasses and a face mask and a hat, completely covered, gloves. You can't see one piece of her skin, maybe just a little bit of hair there. And she walks by without greeting, and he gets kind of freaked out, like, huh, she was home. And then the other neighbor says that she's pretty sure that 2 or 3 women live in there. They all have different heights and different kind of sizes, but they always dress in black. And Mimi's kind of weirded out by the whole situation. And then not too long after that, the noise from upstairs stops completely. And she sees her upstairs neighbor sitting outside one day, kind of just quietly freaking out. And he's like, don't scare me like that. He thinks that the woman next to him is really scary. It's disturbing. They're absolutely dead silent. That's what's freaking him out, is he doesn't know how many people live there, but they never make a sound. And then as he's talking, the shadow falls. And there she is, taller than ever. And shoof, walks up the stairs. So for some reason, right after this, the man moves out. He just can't take it anymore, so he's gone. And then Mimi, for some more inexplicable reason, decides to move into his apartment because the curiosity is just killing her. And that's basically where this story becomes completely bonkers. You get to find out sort of kind of what this woman dressed in black is, whether there are multiple people living in this apartment or what. And it's gonna bring some crazy shit to Mimi's life because there's a little hole in the wall where they start to see each other through the wall, and it's just, everything basically goes to hell. So, yeah, I really like it. I really, really like this story. All right, I'm gonna skip the next story in here, Rustling in the Grass, because it's really short, and it's, again, kind of one of those just kind of gross out jump scares. Anyway, let's move on to Grave Placement. I really, really like this. It's so freaking creepy. So basically, Mimi moves to a new apartment, and the rent's so cheap, and she likes it there, but of course it faces a cemetery. That's why the rent is so cheap. So that's pretty creepy. And, you know, she doesn't really seem to mind, but then little by little, she starts to notice some strange things, like there's this burial mound, there's this lump of soil. They're not really sure what it is. They think it's some kind of burial mound. Of course, in Japan, usually people are cremated when they die, and the bones are put into the grave, just a few bones, and the ashes are scattered somewhere. So it's very rare to bury someone actually in the ground, but maybe that's what it is. They're not really sure, and Naoto's like, Mimi, just forget it, don't worry about it. And then she hears some weird sounds at night. It sounds like the grinding of stones. And then the next morning, she sees her pretty ripped neighbor working out, and she's like, did you hear a strange noise? He's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And then she sees that the grave has been turned slightly. So Japanese graves are not necessarily like, fastened together with concrete or anything like that. They're sometimes just set because you want to be able to open them and actually put the urn inside after someone dies, in the family graves especially. And so you can actually move them. And so this grave has been turned at a strange angle. And she's like, it's twisted. Do they even make graves like this? No, I can see the marks where it was moved. Why would anyone want to move a gravestone? And then that night she sees the hitodama, which is the kind of the bluish spirits of the dead, perhaps. If you watch anime or read a lot of manga, you can see hitodama many times. And she gets Naoto the next day, and she's like, look, this grave is at a weird angle, and the stone on top is actually facing a totally different direction. And then there's actually graves all over this cemetery that are all twisted and facing the wrong way. And then Naoto's like, Mimi, let's go back to your apartment for a second. And then all the gravestones are facing toward the apartment building. And he's like, they weren't like this before, yeah? You're right, I didn't realize. They used to be facing the other way. So all those eyes you're feeling on you, maybe it's because the graves are facing this way. Well, they're not actually hurting you, though. This is awful. Why would anyone... Hey, Mimi? That your neighbor? Yeah? Wild he's out here working out like that. And then Naoto starts to get an idea. So that night, they stay up late. The hitodama appears, and they hear the creepy sound. Someone's there. You see that? and the neighbor is the one who is turning these graves. Why is he out there turning the graves with the hitodama? Well, you got to read the story and find out. It's really creepy, but it's kind of amazing. And so I don't want to spoil any more of this, but basically something really bad is going to happen. Once you hassle the horde, it doesn't matter how much furniture you stack at the door. Aesop rock. The next story, Seashore. Mimi and her friends take a little trip to the beach, but of course something bad's going to happen. This beach is somehow cursed from events that have happened here before, and they start to see really creepy things, and people start hallucinating, thinking that they see people drowning when there's no one there, and of course you know what's going to happen. The next story, Just the Two of Us, has to do with kind of a curse. This shadowy monster that preys on this little girl for reasons. This one actually has a happy ending, not to spoil it too much, but actually the Junji Ito's sometimes nice to the children. Sometimes he's not so nice, like with Tomie. Not so nice to Tomie, but sometimes he can be kind to the little kids. So the last story I'm going to talk about in here is Scarlet Circle, which is just a really freaky story about in the basement of this house, there's this pit, and there's this weird circle on the wall that changes sizes, and the guy who owns the house is like, I had no idea that there's like anything down there, but there's a sacred room, you know, at the bottom, and my grandpa went down there and he vanished. He never came out again. And I don't want to talk about this one too much either, but this is also a really interesting story. The very last story in here, Monster Prop, begins actually in color. It all begins with a meeting. This group wants to add some new elements to the haunted house at Aoizaka theme park next year. Anyone have any ideas? And then Mimi comes up with this this fallen sliding door on the second floor of an old house that's covering up something spooky. And so they go to this kind of freaky looking dude who glares at him, and they ask him for this new monster prop, and he gets a little too excited about it. Kind of freaky, like, thing that's living under this broken fusuma. What the hell is it? All right, I hope I didn't reveal too much, and I hope it didn't scare you too much. You should check out this collection. It's $24 in the US, but I got this cheaper. I think I got it for only like $19 or something like that. But anyway, it's a nice little hardcover collection. Some people said that this is kind of underwhelming, but I thought it was cool. I don't know. I like to read this kind of spooky stories in the summertime, and I really like Junji Ito. I'm a huge fan of his, and anytime a new collection comes out, I just got to get it. So anyway, I hope that gives you a nice overview of Mimi's Tales of Terror. And let me know what you think, if you've read this before, or if you're just reading it for the first time, or if you're interested. If you like Junji Ito and you've read his stories, some of his stories, tell me about it. Leave me a comment. So as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again.